And welcome back to Skeptic's Forge. It's been nearly a month now since I made my last video. I want to apologize for the delay. I've had a lot of stressors occurring simultaneously in different aspects of my life. Work, home, family, politics, medical. In short, my stress levels were through the roof, and I was suffering from anxiety attacks while at work. My blood pressure got high enough that I am now on beta blockers to help with both blood pressure and anxiety. And while that has definitely helped on both ends of the equation, it does happen to leave me feeling quite worn out by the end of a typical workday, leaving me with barely enough energy to function. Of course, it doesn't help that I'm also on a heart-healthy diet, and caffeine is one of the items that I'm no longer ingesting. This entire ordeal has also given me time to rethink how I want to progress with my channel. So far, I have been going off of a free-flowing structure of a loose outline and just talking on the subjects as I thought of them. This was to make things seem more organic and thus more relatable to you, the viewer. It also happened to be the suggestion of one of the producers of some of the other channels I've been appearing on. I carried this out to its logical conclusion during my last recording session and made some pretty rapid progress. My last video concerning Part 1, Chapter 1, Section 2 of The Skeptic Search for God was actually a single segment from a single recording session where I managed to actually make it through the entire first chapter in a single sitting. This rapid progress made me feel quite proud of myself. I managed to upload the first segment just fine, and then played around with the idea of releasing the rest as a single video. I struggled with my free video editing software, as for some reason I was unable to compile the final video. While pondering how to deal with the technical issues, I listened through the entire recording. I became disillusioned with the rapid progress I had made, as I came to realize that I had made several critical errors, having merged some of my memories about certain facts that ultimately skewed the end result to the point of ridiculousness. Seeing this cascade of errors, I'm going to forego the advice of my friends for a little bit. Try things the way I had originally planned at the onset, at least to the degree that I have the tools and know-how to execute. I don't know if you've picked up on it yet or not, but I am reading a script of my own making. Unfortunately, unlike some of my favorite YouTube channels such as Viced Rhino and Apologia, I don't have a cartoon depiction of myself to put on screen to hide this fact. So I'm simply admitting it up front. I'd much rather look a little off than risk delivering faulty information. With this out of the way, I think it's time to dive into our primary content. My last video primarily focused on a crosswalk scenario and its rhetorical value, along with the concepts of time and space. Thankfully, this video was recorded early on in the binge recording session, and I feel more or less comfortable with what I said in that video. Section 3 of Chapter 1 is basically setting the stage for what's to come after, and is the beginning of a long train of cognitive dissonance in the author's writing. It showcases a child version of the author being bored in church, not having the patience nor interest to listen to the dronings-on of the minister. As we are sucked back into the pacing of a first-person narrative, the young version of the author chooses to take advantage of the distraction of his misbehaving brother and to do some mischief of his own, and decides to torment a lady sitting in front of him in church by tricking her to spot out a bug in her hair. The bug, of course, being a rolled-up bulletin that the young author is using to tickle her hair. He eventually gets caught by his father, whom he knows will punish him when he gets home for the felony-level offense. Felony being the author's choice wording, not my own. The offense of being disrespectful in church. Never mind how this paints him as an irresponsible person despite his depicted age. I mean, he did choose to include this as part of his own personal background in this. The interesting point for me, however, is how he's degraded into this kind of behavior in disregard for learning about the Christian God, when just in the last section he stated that even at age 5 and 6, I was very interested in God, and by age 8 had become interested in such concepts as infinity and space. And then after briefly musing over time and space, he then declares that from age 6 through high school, I was very puzzled by these issues. I thought that if God existed at all, he must be somehow mixed up with time and space. This comes off to me as the beginnings of a very disheartening cognitive dissonance. Muncaster says he's very interested in God, and that interest continued on from age 6 through high school, and then goes on in the very next segment to act as if he does not care about God at all. He then goes on to ask the question, what was this church? How could I believe what was taught? All of it was in direct contradiction to what I learned in school. Little did I know how many questions this would raise in the future. The first-person narrative pacing that pushes us to continue past these questions, instead of stopping to think of them with a clear head, and instead of answering them as they're brought up, we're teased with empty statements that suggest that these questions will be answered later in the book. Bringing them up and then skipping past them like this gives the reader a sense of familiarity with the questions, and later a sense that the topics were already addressed and dealt with previously, even though no answers were given. It's a trick of how memory works, and how repetition in a lecture is used to convince somebody that something is true, even though they've done nothing but restate something over and over again. You hear something once, you're aware of it. You hear it again, you get recognition. Oh, I've heard this before. You hear it a third time, okay, that's a pattern. It must be reliable. And that's kind of what's getting set up here. He's putting out these questions here so that you'll recall them. Oh, I've heard these before. And hoping that when you do hear them again later, you'll just brush it off and go, oh, I've already dealt with this before. I remember hearing something about this in this book by this person that I trust because he's in my N group and he is a leader in my N group. So I'm just going to trust that he actually did deal with these and that I don't have anything to worry about asking these questions because somebody else already dealt with them, even though they haven't. You may remember something similar used in the political sphere. When former President Donald Trump was asked about health care, promising to dismantle and replace the Obama administration's Affordable Care Act if he got elected in his 2016 campaign, which changed to he'll take care of it within the first 100 days of office. And then after that, he said he'll get around to it sometime soon. And keeps on going and going, culminating into repeat promises of delivering a plan within 2 weeks, throughout, again and again and again, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks throughout his last year of office, 2020. And, well, Donald Trump is no longer president, and we still don't have any sign of a plan beyond his unfulfilled promises. I've included a news link in the link below from the Kaiser Health News. They're a non-profit health news organization, and they have a much more elaborated explanation of what was going on and actually done regarding that subject. The questions posed at the end of this segment also work as a decent cliffhanger. They push the reader to keep on reading on the promise of forthcoming answers, and continuing to read at a first-person narrative pace instead of pausing to contemplate the questions themselves, of course. So I'd like to leave things off with this. Ask yourself the same questions the author posed here. What is church? Really, what is it? Not the religion itself, not the beliefs themselves, but the church in and of itself. What is it? What is church? And does what it teaches actually contradict what you learn in school? If it does, how do you decide which to believe? And while we're at it, if you go to church, why your specific church? Out of the thousands of religions currently practiced across the globe, and out of the many denominations from each religion, numbering in the hundreds or even thousands of denominations for the major religions, why that religion? Why that denomination? Why that specific church? And what does it say about your own beliefs if you've never sought to answer these questions before? Until next time.